Given the enormous popularity and diversity of shooters in the gaming market, it's easy to forget just how young the genre really is, and how much it's changed since its fledgling days in the 1990s. Just 10 years after the turn of the century, the effects of pioneers like 2007's class-based Team Fortress 2 and the annual iterations of Call of Duty were being felt industry-wide. These impacts, especially TF2's legacy, can still be felt today with the popularity of titles such as Overwatch. But before the era of class shooters, before the COD franchise with all the jetpacks and reboots, there was a particular lobby shooter that transformed PC gaming forever. Now in ancient times, think early 2000s, there was Splash Damage, a game developer who made a name for themselves creating one of the greatest PC multiplayer shooters of all time, Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. And before that, they lent their excellent work to Grey Matter Interactive for Return to Castle Wolfenstein's multiplayer portion. Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, or just Enemy Territory as it was often called, was at one point a top 4 most popular PC shooter in terms of both players and amount of custom servers, trailing only behind Half-Life, Half-Life 2, and Battlefield 2. Splash Damage was PC royalty in the early 2000s, especially because Enemy Territory was a free community game. By 2011, they had launched a couple more titles, and although their 2011 title, Brink, showed potential, it was unable to maintain or capitalize on its success.
What the f- I just went through the wall? What? What the hell? This is-
But that's a story for another time. Today we're looking at the story of Splash Damage's first original intellectual property, Extraction, or as it was known by when it was picked up by publisher Nexon or launched, Dirty Bomb. Dirty Bomb was a free-to-play objective-based team shooter. Dirty Bomb, despite having both favorable Steam reviews and over 9.5 million downloads, was unable to garner a large enough audience, and Splash Damage announced that they would be putting the game in maintenance mode and ending live development in October of 2018. And that's where we step in. We need to answer the question, how did the first original IP by PC Gaming royalty ultimately fail, and what reason was it given its eventual death sentence? On this episode of Death of a Game, we will dive into the story behind Dirty Bomb, and be on the lookout for clues that will help us solve this mystery. Don't worry if you get lost along the way, I have a journal segment near the end where I will recap all of the reasons that we uncover that led to the death of Dirty Bomb. Splash Damage first formed back in May of 2001 as the creators of a Quake 3 mod, Fortress. After following that project up with some multiplayer maps for id Software's Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Splash Damage was then tasked with completing a multiplayer expansion of sorts for Return to Castle Wolfenstein. However, due to the issues with the single-player experience, the multiplayer portion was released as a free standalone game called Wolfenstein Enemy Territory on May 29th, 2003. Enemy Territory was a smash hit. A free-to-play cult classic that is still played to this day. I spent many years playing Enemy Territory with my friends. One friend in particular had tons of old PCs at his house. We would all come over and just play under the same roof. It was awesome. Splash Damage had solidified their foundation by launching one of the best PC shooters ever. But following it up with a string of so-so titles, they launched Brink with Bethesda Softworks in 2011, and while the game sold 2.5 million copies, it was a short-lived online multiplayer shooter, one we can talk about in another Death of a Game at some point. But for now we want to focus on our particular free-to-play shooter, one that would turn out to be Splash Damage's first original IP, Dirty Bomb, a free-to-play multiplayer shooter for the PC. A teaser trailer was released with the press announcement, and it showed what looked to be a shooter based in London, England. As Exodor, the associative creative director on Dirty Bomb, said, it was about returning to the roots of Enemy Territory, the game that essentially put Splash Damage on the map. Fans of Splash Damage's more recent Brink enjoyed that title, but due to its performance issues and matchmaking problems, it lost much of its allure over time. Those fans wanted Dirty Bomb to be a more polished version of something similar to Brink, something that allowed for that same parkour maneuverability, which increased the dynamism in the shooter gameplay. 2 years later, without many more updates on its development, the title was picked up by Nexon America, an American subsidiary of Nexon, the Korean company. Nexon had a reputation for essentially pioneering the modern free-to-play model and a history of running free-to-play shooters such as Combat Arms. Well, so much for freedom, right? I kid. Or do I? It's likely Splash Damage had to give up their publishing rights in order to work with Nexon, but they probably deemed that it was worth the support that they would get in return. I hope they were right. Dirty Bomb was renamed to Extraction before being renamed back in May 2014 back to Dirty Bomb. At this point, more details surrounding the game would be revealed. Dirty Bomb would have two game modes. One was named Objective, which would put one team on offense and the other on defense. The offensive team would try to complete objectives, while the defending team would attempt to stop them. The other was named Stopwatch. Stopwatch is similar, except both teams would get to try both attacking and defending, with the winning team having the best objective completion time. The key element of Dirty Bomb was, well, nobody was a hero. It was about a group of mercenaries trying to make as much cash as possible. That unscrupulous underdog narrative really fit well with the overall theme of the game, and to some extent, splash damage itself. Therefore, calling Dirty Bomb a hero shooter doesn't really work, especially early in development. Modern hero shooters like Overwatch have a large array of characters that all play differently and may or may not excel in different situations depending on how you play them. Dirty Bomb's characters were instead designed around their specific kits. The game boasted 5 classes: Recon, Fire Support, Medic, Engineer, and Assault. Each class focused on a particular skill that would contribute to the success of their team. For example, Aura is a medic. She has the ability to resurrect or heal her teammates, whereas Bushwhacker is an engineer who excels at holding down certain locations. And then you have the traditional shoot-'em-up class and hero being the Assault class and Fragger respectively. The focus on specific roles meant that ultimately the game did reward teamwork, and it absolutely rewarded picking the right types of classes and using them in the right scenario. But it still ultimately rewarded good aim. Abilities weren't powerful to the point of being overpowered, so gunplay was still ultimately the focus. Well, that was probably until Phantom came out, which unfortunately wasn't so soon after launch. Another big aspect of Dirty Bomb was the loadout card system. Loadout cards were randomly earned and ranged in rarity from bronze to cobalt. Despite being random, most cards followed similar weapon patterns, at least if the cards were for the same merc. For example, an Arty card might have 8 or 9 different variants, but most would use the same AR as the primary weapon and back it up with a pistol and then a knife. Loadouts also supported augments, which were passive abilities you gained once activating the card. These were randomly generated, of course, and these were mostly passives. So you had to keep grinding for new cards and hope you got the right mixture of augments and weapons, all the while being killed over and over by people who already have their preferred loadouts. Of course, you could see the problem here. Or you could just spend some money.
Oh my god, Joe! Joe! What?
Dirty Bomb had a closed beta in January of 2015, only allowing in select few testers. Impressions at the time from PC Invasion stated that it's a great looking game, a rapid PC shooter, and there are certain elements carried over from the Enemy Territory series which should appeal even if you aren't familiar with those older games. For now, I have concerns that perhaps this may not be different or compelling enough to maintain an audience, which is something Splash Damage will need if they're going to keep cash coming in. A few months later in March, they opened the floodgates to all who purchased the Merc Starter Pack, which cost $20 and offered 5 permanently unlocked Mercs: Proxy, Vasily, Sawbones, Arty, and Fragger. I of course caught wind of this game and made my purchase during this time period as well. The pack also came with 35,000 in-game credits, which was around the cost of an additional Merc. Clearly Splash Damage knew that they would need to earn early support to fund their title, especially with a publisher to satisfy in Nexon. So they wanted to incentivize their first loyal players to purchase the early closed beta access by enticing them with a deal that seemed to be valued at $40. Now, some people have issues with companies selling earlier access to games. I don't necessarily think it's inherently bad if it's more so done in this scenario, which is kind of like a starter pack for a free-to-play game. $20 didn't seem like a bad idea to me, and it certainly didn't seem a bad idea to at least the 13,000 other players according to Steam who were playing concurrently during that beta period. This number was impressive for a game that essentially was a veteran developer working on it, but didn't exactly have a AAA marketing budget. Dirty Bomb launched its free-to-play open beta on Steam June 2nd, 2015. The business model would allow for free play of a rotating cast of mercs. However, if you wanted to permanently unlock a merc, you either purchased it with credits or real-life cash. A merc could run you anywhere between 30 to 50,000 credits, equivalent to approximately 56 hours of grinding, or $7 to $10 for a merc instead. All in all, the system was standard fare for a free-to-play shooter. There were some early positive impressions of the game, such as from 10 Ton Hammer, who stated that Dirty Bomb is very much worth checking out if you enjoy objective-based FPS gameplay. While MMO Huts pointed out the mercenary price being quite steep, they ended their impressions with, if you are a fan of online team shooters, then Dirty Bomb is a can't-miss game in 2015. Industry vet GameSpot, on the other hand, wasn't so happy with their impression of Dirty Bomb. Defined by its predecessors, Dirty Bomb straddles a divide between old and new, never quite able to step out of the shadows of the game that came before. Still, if you're looking for a decent multiplayer shooter on the very cheap, Dirty Bomb is a fast-paced possibility. However, I'm not confident that the core will improve enough for the game to reach beyond merely ordinary. While Brink sits in history as a game that tripped on its path to fame, Dirty Bomb will be fortunate to be remembered at all. Side note, the article stated that Nexon contacted them to let them know that the open beta wasn't considered a full reviewable release and more features were planned. GameSpot stated that it was advertised effectively as the full launch of the game. Cheeky GameSpot giving it to Nexon there. Anyway, I can see the GameSpot reviewer Cameron Woolsey's point here. Brink was unique in its parkour movement, and still largely is till this day. You had the ability to jump, slide, and kick off of walls. You could kick off of a wall, pull yourself to another ceiling if possible, or kick off of a wall, completely change direction and momentum, and then jump to another direction. This opened up gameplay and movement options while still maintaining a boots-on-the-ground feel of sorts by not going super jetpacky. Brink was unique, flaws and all. But as I continued to play Dirty Bomb, and as many of the other critics and user reviews have stated, the game was good but had nothing particularly unique about it. Sure, it had some foundational aspects of enemy territory, but they haven't really done too much to push that envelope further yet. The other key difference in the two titles was that Brink used the id Tech 4 software, the same parent software they had used with Enemy Territory. With Dirty Bomb being their first IP, Splash Damage went with Unreal Engine 3, probably to cut costs, but I can't be entirely sure why. Unreal 3 has a special place in this series because it has been in so many games that we have covered before. Unreal 3 was Unreal's sort of brown stain, if you will, that wouldn't quite wash away. The engine often had issues with being clunky and laggy, with texture pop-in issues as well as some textures just simply looking quite crude. Titles such as APB and Marvel Heroes both had tremendous performance issues due to their engines, a fate which, as many will see as the story continues to unfold, Dirty Bomb unfortunately could not escape either. Dirty Bomb was also plagued with serious server issues, causing latency and disconnects at their June 2015 launch, which Splash Damage was aware of and working on fixing. Another problematic issue for Dirty Bomb was it had no anti-cheat system, and although it would get one later in the year, it wasn't really an effective anti-cheat system. And so cheaters very much were dominating early betas. It might not have been a perfect open beta launch, but Dirty Bomb peaked on Steam at 11,302 players, which is a bit interesting considering its paid beta just a few months earlier had 1,600 more players. So clearly they had some casualties during their launch woes and growing pains. Dirty Bomb was sort of like the little engine that could, chugging along even though it faces an intimidating uphill climb. Clearly the game suffered from its framework being problematic, as we know in hindsight with most Unreal 3 projects. But where Dirty Bomb really started to encounter issues from a gameplay standpoint was after launch when Splash Damage began introducing new mercenaries. For example, when Kira and Rhino launched, they were $9 aka 50,000 credits, aka about a week of grinding or 56 hours as we mentioned previously. So already they are priced quite high, but the real reason that people started to get up in arms about this is that these two new mercenaries are clearly next generation mercenaries, not just in regards to their pricing, but also their abilities. Rhino has a giant minigun which can shred anyone in his path, but he needs a pocket healer to truly be effective, and not get fragged or something. Kira has an orbital strike which acts as an area effect bomb, and she also deploys ammo. So both are quite strong characters even just based on their archetypes, but the issue I find with both characters is how overwhelmingly different they feel. Yes, Rhino is using a gun, but it is almost comically large, a far cry from the rest of the Mercs' arsenals. As for Kira, this is the first time we see an ability that could theoretically wipe a team with a single strike. It's a dangerous precedent, as it upsets the careful balance Dirty Bomb had in place where each class and their abilities were useful and necessary for a win without being outright more powerful than the guns. With the first round of new Mercs, however, the tide was already turning. Reading through the Kira Rhino update, this is also the particular update they unveiled their elite cases, which contained a single random loadout card of at least silver rarity, which was a 2% chance. These cases ran at $5 a pop, or for 10, $35. The odds to get a Cobalt skin, the highest tier, 0.1%. I think that this is just truly ridiculous. I have to spend $5 to guarantee a slightly rarer loadout, so I get a higher percentage to get it, but it's still ultimately random? Why can't I just buy the loadout that I want, or buy the skin that I want? Well, I think we know that reason, don't we? The balance wasn't broken quite yet though. Dirty Bomb did indeed lose about 33% of its population within its first month, but this drop-off is common in lower boundary to entry titles, especially free-to-play ones. From July to August 2015, however, we can see a clear drop of another 2,100 players, and well, I think I have an answer for that one. Phantom. Another step in the opposite direction of Dirty Bomb's original vision. Initially, I had to speculate on this clue, but as you will see shortly, the developers themselves confirmed my suspicions later. The poor reception to the Mercs announcement could be felt throughout the entire player base.
That's a Phantom. God damn it.
Even just read below the updates in the comments. Some were saying that the game was now doomed, others begged for nerfs, and people in near unison echoed that he shouldn't be able to go invisible and have a shield at the same time. Phantom would prove to be a thorn in Splash Damage's side for years to come, especially in regards to balance. Early on, Phantom was too difficult to spot, on top of his armor being super effective. Phantom could also attack from stealth, meaning he could severely injure or even kill an enemy before being spotted. If Kira and Rhino were the spark, Phantom was the gasoline poured on Dirty Bomb that lit the whole idea of revisiting enemy territories up in flames. Now the game was far more about abilities that didn't change with the September update, which added an anti-cheat system, private matches, and the ability to report players, all of which were very much needed due to rampant aimbotters in the game. September also brought with it the announcement of a medic named Phoenix, who would have a pulsating healing effect ability. Now to many outsiders, adding mercenaries with powerful abilities doesn't really seem bad, because many of you have probably played Overwatch. Dirty Bomb was originally nicely balanced between those elements, but through adding characters like Phoenix and Phantom, many fans believe that Splash Damage was steering away from what Dirty Bomb was all about. I think there's a plan behind implementing more ability-reliant mercenaries into Dirty Bomb, which we're going to get to later. Although it wasn't dying yet, Dirty Bomb did seem to have some initial problems with retention. Many free-to-play titles experienced these issues, however, although Dirty Bomb had certainly lost at least a third of its initial audience. For roughly the next year through April 2016, as shown on screen via the Steam charts, Dirty Bomb would stabilize between 5,800 players and 7,000 players. 2016 would prove to be a very quiet year for Dirty Bomb. Yes, Splash Damage was churning out new mercenaries, but they hardly released any new maps and spent most of the year fixing performance issues and bugs, which is great, but their loyal fanbase going almost a year without significant gameplay changes meant that the game was just simply growing stale. Quietly, however, in the summer of 2016, the most important hidden detail of the story unveils itself. Splash Damage is sold to Radius Maxima, a subsidiary of Chinese poultry firm Loadout Technologies Holding Limited. Loadout was looking to expand its presence in the video game sector, so a chicken supplier decides to diversify by buying a video game developer. I guess they were feeling a little bit, cooped up. You can blame my script editor for that one. We've seen some big companies buy up developers before, and I could see the situation with Splash Damage going in two ways. Either they position themselves to bring Dirty Bomb to the next level, or they begin working on a new title, and according to the article, they had already started plans on an unannounced project. So the summer of 2016 passed, and Dirty Bomb's future was very much up in the air. Perhaps Dirty Bomb was becoming less of a focus for Splash Damage. They couldn't keep pumping money into the game if it wasn't going to be financially successful. The population had dwindled to 3,700 players by June of 2016, only a year after the game's public open beta. The big update of 2016 came November 21st. It was dubbed the Mofo Update,
the map overhaul and frame rate optimization update.
With this patch came a boatload of bug fixes, map overhauls, and increased performance and frame rate. They even added some level of matchmaking to quick join to improve match balance. Map overhauls meant retextured or relit maps, as well as performance optimizations. According to the fans in the comments of the Mofo update on Steam, although the changes were wanted and certainly appreciated, they didn't seem to be significant enough to warrant essentially a year with almost no new content. And I find myself agreeing with the random Steam mob here. When you spend a year optimizing your game, many people will conclude that your game launched far too soon. The game was too bare to survive without new content being injected into it, but since it still had an array of performance issues after launch, Splash Damage was forced to focus on fixing those and put the content updates mostly on hold, except for the ones that really make them money, which are new mercenaries. Dirty Bomb finished out 2016 with only 3,500 players. Even after the Mofo update, fans were dropping like flies. What was wrong with Dirty Bomb? Were they simply unable to put out enough content to satisfy their audience? Or was it perhaps their platform, Unreal 3, whose optimization issues were to blame? At some point we have to put the blame on the developers, and Splash Damage seemed to want to take responsibility. They weren't willing to give up on Dirty Bomb yet. In February of 2017, Splash Damage acquired the publishing rights from Nexon. The cause for such a change was not immediately explained, but as the article stresses on screen, this meant that Splash Damage would have full publishing control of the game. Perhaps Splash was getting some extra funding from the fat pockets of their new buddy Radius Maxima, or maybe it was the last big attempt to make changes for the better. News of the purchase also came with the announcement that the Easy Anti-Cheat would be the new anti-cheat of choice for the game, replacing their old ineffective anti-cheat. I say that from experience. A few months later, PC Games In did an interview with Splash Damage marketing director Jeremy Greiner, who explained that the reason they had bought back the publishing rights to Dirty Bomb was because development had become stale at Nexon, and the money from Radius Maxima meant that they could afford to invest in the games themselves. They seemed to make good on that promise, as since signing the deal they had released 2 new maps, a new Merc. 2016 might have been slow for Dirty Bomb, but Splash Damage seemed to be dedicated to making sure 2017 was their year. Splash Damage also stepped up the monetization game, introducing new pricing and a swath of new bundles. This moved some previously cheaper mercenaries such as Vasily to the $9 category, and Fragger, originally included in the starter mercenary pack, now costs $7. Pricing was aggressive, but not completely unfair. Splash Damage would follow this repricing with another key act: the removing of Execution game mode, which was essentially a CSGO styled Dirty Bomb match. According to the community manager, Chris Mullins, Execution accounted for only 5% of player game's total time. Every time Splash Damage would add new content, they would inevitably get rid of some type of content. 2017 brought with it new maps, new mercs, and some good changes to Dirty Bomb in many respects, but it also brought more balancing changes to shotguns, effectively nerfing their effectiveness, as well as numerous AR nerfs that many fans of the title deemed unwarranted. In some cases, Splash Damage completely removed the ability to headshot on certain guns, and then added more RNG spread to firing patterns. Across the board, it seemed as if Splash Damage was making a more concerted effort towards having a more casual sort of gameplay, and not one entirely supported by its original, more hardcore niche audience. This is risky, because if you upset your core fanbase, you can kill your game permanently, as even they won't want to play it anymore. But if you do alienate them in favor of a much larger audience, it can be worth it in the end, according to the checkbooks of course, but it is a huge risk. And frankly speaking, this is probably one of the biggest causes for death of games on this series. The problem with Splash Damage is they seem to release balance patches first, then see if they fix the problem after players got their hands on the updates. It seemed as if they had very little in the way of QA or testing. Launching big balance patches without testing can be very harmful for any game, but especially so for a multiplayer game already hemorrhaging players. Any new changes that don't immediately show market improvements can only result in more players leaving. And as the player count dwindles, ranked matchmaking becomes more and more impossible, causing even more players to leave, which completes the cycle of death we have covered a few times on this channel. The difficult thing with balance is any kind of balance change, whether in the core gameplay mechanics or in the meta, can result in unforeseen problems with other aspects in the game, leading to additional tweaks. And when those things too get nerfed, the game loses more and more variety, and before long players just feel less effective than they did in the past. This makes some players just want to return to how things used to be, something we covered with the culling on this series, where players ended up returning to a previous patch version of the game due to balance issues. Sometimes your game needs to hit that reset button, sometimes it just doesn't really have the time to. Splash Damage also continued to focus heavily on monetization, which created a sour taste in the collective mouth of their loyal fanbase. Sure, everyone knows that Splash Damage has to pay the bills and the game is free to play, they have to find ways to monetize. But even the loyal fans who stuck through the most dry content periods were a lot less willing to handle heavy promotion when they already felt like the game was on borrowed time, or even owed them in some respects. Constant broken promises will make customers feel that way. December 2017 rolls around and Splash Damage finally announces weapon skins. Long had Dirty Bomb fans waited for the actual ability to have skins in the game, since the arbitrary rarity cards didn't really look cool or interesting enough to truly be called a skin. Not to mention they were gained randomly. Splash Damage announced the system as a work in progress and coming soon. By May of 2018, they were yet again promising it was still on the way. So it seemed that they had promised the skins before they even had the legalities figured out. Little to no variety in appearance can make an already slightly repetitive game that much more repetitive. It's also just silly from a business perspective not to have a greater push towards skins. Customization aside, one of the biggest issues Dirty Bomb faced at this point was a skill disparity amongst players. Ranked modes wouldn't really fix this, because although Dirty Bomb started as a competitive shooter, it slowly morphed into something else. Its ranked audience wasn't very large, and it wasn't uncommon to spend half an hour waiting for a match. And when you would get a match, it wasn't uncommon to have a kobold on the other team, and then essentially it's just whoever has the most kobolds on your team. In casual matchmaking, there were still large disparities between new players and players who had reached, say, level 30, which meant they already had put dozens of hours into the game. Splash Damage's fix to both matchmaking options, not offering, quote, optimal experiences, was to gut them both completely. May 2018 was the Quick Join update, which killed both casual and ranked matchmaking. Quick Join was an attempt to get quicker matches, to combat the otherwise slow and more deliberate matchmaking that simply can't function well when population starts to drop. Servers would now allow for a ping difference up to 150 milliseconds when finding players, increasing the amount of matches but lowering the quality. The Quick Join system also got rid of Dirty Bomb's party system, making it very difficult to play with a friend unless you just joined their game, which even then wouldn't necessarily put you both on the same team. So not only did the patch seem like a decrease in game quality to the few remaining players, it was actually another reduction in content as well, something Dirty Bomb had a history of doing at this point. When Dirty Bomb got rid of execution, so went the maps with that mode, and Splash Damage released nothing new to replace that cut content. So over time, Dirty Bomb was finding more ways to decrease in features, only further pissing their audience off. The Quick Join update resulted in the lowest population Dirty Bomb had seen yet, 1,254 players concurrently. In order to satisfy their competitive audience, Splash Damage teamed up with competitive tournament organizer Faceit to give their competitive scene a facelift. I'm sorry. A consolation perhaps, but I doubt that a population that was continuing to drop was going to be very interested in downloading a third-party program just to sit in another 30-minute queue when there wasn't still enough players to play with. The Faceit partnership was part of their big move towards returning to balance, taking the game back to 1.0. Yep, when met with a situation of having to work through their balancing mistakes and attempt to fix issues, they decided to just retcon the whole thing and start over. And to be honest, I can't completely blame them, since the game had certainly strayed far from its initial path. But that being said, how much would going back to 1.0 in August 2018, over 3 years after its launch, really help Dirty Bomb at this point? If the population was only continuing to drop, it likely didn't matter what Splash Damage did with Dirty Bomb. They had a gaping wound that no matter how much they tried to ignore it and focus on monetization and small bug fixes, that wound kept bleeding players who were sick of the core issues that still weren't being fixed. This is the most design theory heavy part of the video, but bear with me here. In order to analyze why Dirty Bomb failed, we need to first answer the question of why it kept hemorrhaging its players. When assessing Dirty Bomb's population over the course of 3 years or so, the only time we saw rather abrupt drops in population were after big launch periods. The first big hump here is closed beta, followed by launch and then up and down for a bit, as you would expect from a game not heavily advertised with such a low investment. But why don't we see any spikes in population as we would see in other typical online games? Spikes as in positive spikes. That's either because they were losing more players than they were gaining, or it was because they weren't putting enough effort into new content, new features, and attracting a newer audience. But sometimes when it comes to things like this, it's both. Splash Damage was clearly not putting all of its reported 357-person development team into Dirty Bomb, as there would be no way they would release content so infrequently if that were the case. Not to mention we already know that since being acquired by Loadout, they were working on an unannounced PC title. So it's possible that Dirty Bomb might not have been getting the focus or attention it needed from Splash Damage at this point. But if we analyze the game design itself, we can spot some very clear problems present throughout the game that could potentially explain why it was unable to maintain a consistent player base. The first obvious reason Dirty Bomb's player base retention took a hit was hackers. It took Splash Damage all the way until spring of 2017, about 2 years after their open beta launch, to implement a truly functional anti-cheat system. This was a large reason people didn't play ranked, because hackers were quite rampant during those first 2 years. But the other reason harkens all the way back to us talking about the delicate balance between gunplay and abilities in class/hero shooters. In games like CSGO, the gunplay is the ultimate focus, so many players go to insane lengths to better their gunplay skills, such as memorizing bullet spread for each gun. In a game like Overwatch, however, more often than not, your abilities and ultimates are what net you kills and win games. Dirty Bomb, with its slightly longer time to kill, was a middle ground between these two extremes, and also came out before Overwatch. However, as Dirty Bomb spent more time being developed, its developers realized that they had been originally marketing and designing it too much to a specialized and niche audience.
We realized that we've made the game for a very small group of people.
I can only infer what this means, as all detectives might in such a situation where they lack evidence. I believe that they are implying that the game being too focused on gunplay made the game more hardcore, which appealed to their niche enemy territory audience, but limited their ability to appeal to a larger audience in exchange. And frankly, they have a point. Inherently speaking, a more gunplay-centric shooter is going to be more hardcore and skill-intensive, as it requires more mechanical ability, the ability to really aim pixel perfect. Therefore, as a title like Dirty Bomb transitions more and more to mercenaries with strong abilities, it loses more and more of that original balance and essence. Even if Dirty Bomb could manage to return to its 1.0 balance, its mercenaries aren't balanced for 1.0. This means that splash damage was essentially in a catch-22. Returning to their roots would also create an unbalanced, incomplete game, but for an entirely different reason. Likely more problematic for the company, however, was that although Dirty Bomb was playable using DirectX 11 in 2018, the game was looking and feeling dated. And this was likely due to them using the Unreal 3 engine, which already had been succeeded by the Unreal 4 engine in 2014, making Unreal 3 practically ancient by this point.
Dirty Bomb is now officially 1.0!
Dirty Bomb had its official launch roughly 3 years after open beta launch, and after the 1.0 update on August 28, 2018, the population jumped back up to 4,091 players, quadrupling its previous numbers. However, with the update came a slew of performance and server issues. Dirty Bomb's Hail Mary started strong like its original launch, but continued underlying problems meant that the population crashed to 1,173 players just a month later, a near all-time low. This image sums up the response towards Dirty Bomb finally launching 3 years later. 9 upvotes. Ouch. YouTuber Savraka was hopeful for 1.0, but still had many concerns for the game regardless. As he explains in his video,
I'm pretty much getting sick of talking about Dirty Bomb because I have nothing good to say at this point. I mean, was I the only one who was surprised that the community servers have a disgusting lack of customization? Maybe it's just me, but I thought the community servers were going to feature at least some level of effort put into them to where we could choose how we want to run our servers, like if we wanted to make knife-only or sniper-only lobbies, for example. But we can't even customize movement speed, merc health, ability cooldowns, or anything as far as I'm aware. And the reasons we were given as to why, for example, they don't want us customizing movement speed, were downright stupid.
As a lot of the levels are built with the speeds we have in mind.
Who cares about you? These are supposed to be community servers. It should be our decision to run them how we want.
which is a fair point. Little to no custom server configuration makes tournaments and rule sets harder to develop, and Splash Damage's response to this was not the best response. Savraka further explains that the community is fed up with broken promises.
Because when I left, there were promises of crafting improvements, weapon polishing, a public test server, an SDK, more maps, Steam trading, balance updates, and more. But in the one fucking week that I've been back playing this game, I have never been more infuriated.
I found this perspective interesting as it comes from a YouTuber that I essentially found randomly, but one who was clearly so passionate about the game and whose criticism matches up with our timeline so far to the T. By October 2018, Dirty Bomb was below 1,000 players concurrently, so it wasn't a surprise when Splash Damage announced that they would be ending live development for Dirty Bomb. After regaining publishing rights for DB nearly 2 years ago, we staffed up a load of developers and tried our best to deliver a Dirty Bomb experience that would be feature-rich, with tons of new content, while maintaining its great gameplay feel and balance. Unfortunately, despite all the added time and resources, there were some challenges we couldn't overcome, and we were not able to make DB the success that we hoped it could be. The bottom line is, we just can't financially justify continuing to work on the game that we love. And can you really blame them? After a certain point, when you're operating on an old engine in Unreal 3, and your game simply, no matter how many times you try and reboot the game by literally rebooting it, it's still not working, there's just no way Splash Damage can continue to put more money into the game. Dirty Bomb would continue to be playable, with all monetization removed and servers running into the end of 2019. Beyond that, no decision had been made. And so the end is on the horizon for Dirty Bomb, but I am sure I still have a few of you wondering about our investigation here. Why did Dirty Bomb ultimately fail to capture or maintain an audience? Let me pull out my journal so we can connect the clues and put this case to bed. Rampant hacking and cheating that wasn't properly stopped until Easy Anti-Cheat update happened, which was nearly 2 years after launch. According to Splash Damage, 2016 was a slow year for Dirty Bomb due to little support from Nexon. Note, perhaps choosing Nexon as a publisher possibly pushed Dirty Bomb into more of an aggressive monetization format as well. A little bit of evidence mixed with some speculation. Unreal Engine 3 has repeatedly been mentioned in this series as laggy, buggy, and clunky for a reason. The evidence is the game engine itself, and well, there's just too many similar cases. Although Dirty Bomb was Splash Damage's first original IP, it wasn't exactly a high-dollar budget project. After being acquired by Liu, the Chinese poultry company, Splash Damage had already diverted most of their attention to another $10 million project. Less focus and money on Dirty Bomb doesn't exactly help the already struggling title. 1.0 relaunch failure. The 1.0 launch doesn't address core issues of mercenary design. Is the game a game about teamwork, or is it a class shooter, or just strictly a shooter? It also introduced a slew of new bugs and server issues, so although it increased the population again, it was quickly re-gutted. Throughout the level of development of Dirty Bomb, content updates were few and far in between. When they did come, they often took content away from the game, execution modes, maps, casual and ranked matchmaking, etc. Having only 2 game modes could get stale quickly, and an over-focus on selling new mercenaries meant that the loyal audience who did enjoy the game didn't have enough reason to keep playing unless they wanted to purchase new mercenaries. Because of a lower population, Dirty Bomb players suffered infrequent matches. However, when developers solved that issue by creating opportunities for more matches, they ruined the balance and quality of said matches, which simply led to more players leaving. Once the game was leaking, Splash Damage tried everything except systematically shutting that hole. Dirty Bomb failed to escape the shadow of any of the games it was inspired by. Enemy Territory and Brink both do what they do better than Dirty Bomb. Dirty Bomb fell victim to being painfully average and not very revolutionary, which isn't good for longevity. When you can get the same experience, if not a better experience, what reason do you have to choose Dirty Bomb over another competitor? Dirty Bomb is certainly not a story I can easily say case closed on, because ultimately, in regards to game design, we don't know if the game failed because it was wrong or because of the other factors we have outlined. Correlation doesn't equal causation, of course. It's incorrect to assume that because a game such as Dirty Bomb failed, or any game really, it is entirely based on either its game design or its business decisions. The stories are far more intricate and detailed than that. Team-based objective shooters surely can still work in 2019, but they will always need a careful balance when allowing for abilities. Too much of a focus on abilities and things gets easier and less classic feeling, which can alienate the hardcore audience, and too much focus on gunplay can alienate the more casual audience. It's a delicate balance between casual and hardcore. Obviously, the larger audience is the casual audience, so you certainly want a casual audience. But you also want a hardcore audience, because if you don't have a hardcore audience, it likely means your game doesn't have longevity. And when balancing, you must be careful at taking knee-jerk reaction stances, because once you muck up balance, it can be very painful to fix, and you're only losing more and more players. When it comes to a shooter that relies on matchmaking, modes, and etc., there's just no way you're going to get consistent matches, which means that your game is just simply going to die. It's easy to say Dirty Bomb never got a fair shake, considering if it was held hostage by Nexon for a year, that could very well be a death sentence for a fledgling multiplayer shooter that doesn't have the budget to advertise heavily. At the same time, perhaps what Dirty Bomb represented was more of an idea, an ode to the past glory of Enemy Territory. For many of us fans of Dirty Bomb, we were fans of old objective-based shooters, and as time has passed, we have sort of been pushed to the background in favor of more hero-centric shooters. I don't think remaining the same as before is good enough anymore. Where Dirty Bomb struggled the most creatively was although it took basic building blocks from Brink and Enemy Territory, Dirty Bomb never properly had its own gameplay identity, perhaps focusing too much on what has been done before and not enough on what hasn't been done before. What will the history books say about a title such as Dirty Bomb when it dies a slow and measured death? Will they even say anything at all? If you are watching this before 2020, you still have a chance to play the game completely free on Steam right now. Dirty Bomb might not have been the best game, and it certainly didn't impress the market enough to stay, but it managed to sustain a cult following, at least to some extent. And it provided many fun hours to those who play the game, myself included, when it wasn't plagued with bugs, hackers, and broken matchmaking, of course. Splash Damage's newest title might ignite interest in those disenfranchised over Dirty Bomb, but there's a good chance that the loyal fanbase won't trust Splash Damage enough to return for another attempt at an online shooter. The trail was littered with too many broken promises and opened wallets. Thanks for watching, guys.